Alright everybody, this is going to be a video that talks about color in processing. We've been using basically grayscales, colors, tonal values and everything so far, but now we're going to introduce color into this. But before we do that, we want to kind of talk about what's happening with the color. So color is visualized basically on the computer in a different way than with paint or other media. The computer monitor is transmitting light, and the screen is actually black itself, so that we start adding light to that screen and we start creating colors based on that, because we're going to be working with an red, green, and blue colors. And depending how we mix those colors together, or we add them to the screen, will give us the colors that we're looking at. So this is known as the additive color model. And so we'll be adding full values of 255 of the RGB. So the R, the red color, will have 0 to 255 steps of its color that we can add. Same for blue, same for green. And those are going to give us the variable as we mix those colors, adding a little of this and adding a little of that. That will give us the color that we want. Basically, we're transmitting light. And so, as an example of this, we can create colors by I'm just going to copy in right now my background. I'm going to choose a size so you can see this. I always like 500 pixels by 500 pixels. And if I was to fill this, I'm going to be using the RGB. So I'm giving it full saturation of red, zero amounts of blue, 0 amounts of green. And if I do that, I should get a red color. I get red. Now, same idea. If I take this, I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to put a 0 in there and move it over. And if I put it 255 there, so I have basically no other color other than full on green. Now if I reduce that, for instance, I'm going to get a darker shade, because the rest of the colors are basically black, so I'm going to be reducing that. And the lower and lower and lower I get, the more close to pure black I'm going to see. So that's very, very dark. It looks pure black, but it's just low levels of green. So if I bring that up a little bit more, you'll see that it should start to be a little bit less black. Same here, if I make this 0 and this 255, I'm going to get just a blue screen. So those are my basic colors I'm working with. Then we start to mix them together. If I'm just using full on mixing, I have a green and I have a red. Well, you're saying, well, that's purple. It's not brown like we learned in school. Well, that's because it's a little bit different when we use the monitors. Matter of fact, if we were to change this one and mix these together, we're going to end up with a different color. So instead of getting R and G, blue, red and blue actually work pretty well. But it's the red and the green that make a yellow color. And that's different because of the way the colors work on the screen. So anyway, we'll be mixing with these things. One of the things that we're going to be looking at is how we can utilize the different settings. So one of the things we have is that if we want to choose a color, we have the ability to work with RGB values, and we also have what's called an alpha value. An alpha value is a transparency value. And so, for instance, if I wanted to create an object, if I wanted to create an object, let's say I wanted to create an ellipse. So here's my ellipse function. I'm going to just put it in the middle of my canvas just so that you can see. So in X, it's just going to be width divided by 2, height divided by 2, and then its size, I'll make it 150 by 150, okay? But before I draw that, if I was to just draw that right now, I would get a gray circle. But, and my background is yellow, so that's nice. Now keep that in mind. Now, before I draw something, I always want to define the color and define its fill values. And so what I want to do is I can actually take my fill value, and here's the formula for that. I'm going to add the R, G, and B. So right now I have an RGB value of these two, okay? And let's say I wanted to add something unique. So let's find an RGB value, and I can do that by going into my tools, and I'm going to go to my color selector. So if I'm looking at RGB, if my first two numbers are 250 by 250, I'm going to choose a blue color here. And I can go up and I can choose in this area, and I'm going to get an RGB value of 104, 180, and 240. So I'm going to fill that in, 104, 180, and 240. And I'm going to change my alpha, my transparency, to 100, so it's fully opaque. So 100 is fully opaque. Oh, actually, 255, I mean. If I run this, I'm going to close this. If I do everything right, I should see the blue color that I expected. Now, if I'm interested in giving it a transparent attribute, I can change this value to be less than 255. Fully opaque is 255. I want to reduce that like half. If I run this, I should be able to now see that that blue is blending with my yellow, creating a green color, which is what we'd expect if we were familiar with red and blue. Yellow and blue. If I upped that, if I made that a little bit more heavy on the blue color, let's say I'm going to go up to 200. So I'm getting this, okay? Well, what's fun is when we start to take something like this and blend the colors. So I have the ability to take, I'm going to just copy this, both of these, and I'm going to change them here a little bit. I'm going to move this over, so I'm going to just change this, because I know that this is 255. I'm just going to 250. I'm going to move it over to about 300 in X. I'm going to leave it in Y, but I want to change the actual fill color. So right now, well, actually, if I left it the same and just moved it over, what I think is interesting is you can see where the colors overlap, because we have nice transparency here, and we have our value here that is giving us a nice overlap. So we can really see that transparency. If I wanted to play around with this a little bit more, Control Copy, I'm going to subtract 50 off this side, so I'm going to make this 200, and I'll change this to currently it's a blue, and I have yellow, so I'm getting green, so I'm going to make it red, and I'll make an orange on this side, but then when it blends together, I'm expecting maybe a brown color. So I'm going to go to my color picker, and I'm going to go down to the orange attribute here. I'm going to give it a little bit of an orange color. Nothing too crazy. Alright, so I'm going to choose this. So I'm going to make it, this one's going to be my orange one. My fill color is going to be 255 and red. My green is going to be 183. And my blue is going to be 124. And I'm going to leave that alpha the same. Now I'm going to run this, see what I get. Now I can see I have lots of different colors happening. I have my orange here, my red blending with my yellow, which gives me an orange. I have my red blending with my blue, and then I have my red blending with my blue here. And so I might actually move this over a little bit further. I'm going to move it over 100. And see what I get like that. So I moved it over a little too much. I'm going to move it over, I'm going to put it in at 125. Okay, then I can see these different colors now. This nice orange, this blue, this nice blending, this blue or these two overlap, and then this nice green. So I'm getting some really nice attributes. Now, if I wanted to, I could change the stroke value too. I could add a stroke value. So I can play with that in a lot of different ways. All right. One thing that we can do is we can actually save our colors as a variable. So if I wanted to, I could save my color as an actual variable name, and the variable name will be used instead of the color. So ahead of time, I can choose the colors that I want, and I can define them ahead of time. So this is going to give me a data type of color, and this is going to be a gray value. This is going to be a data type of color, and it's going to be a pink color. This is going to be a green color, but it has an alpha value to it. Each one of them has a unique variable name that I can use in place of a color value. And so when I want to use that, for instance, I'm going to copy this code here because I've already set this up to be what I want. I'm going to take this and replace this here with this code. I've got my background color, okay, set to white. I'm not going to have a stroke. I'm going to make it a smooth, and I'm going to use these attributes, and I get this. I can see my transparency, I can see my pink colors, and I can see my gray colors and how they're all overlapping. And I can use those values instead of using a number. I've defined the number ahead of time, planned ahead, and I simply use my variable name in the place where I want it. So instead of putting in a number, an RGB number there, I just put in the variable name instead. And that gives me a real nice amount of flexibility because I can do my homework and pick all my colors, assign them to a variable, and then use those later on. Another example of this is using something called hue and saturation. And so I can actually use hue and saturation as values. Instead of using RGB numbers, I can change the hue and saturation values. So I can adjust things. And so I have an animation here that will actually create well, it's just going to draw things out for you in order, so you can kind of see how things change over time. You don't have to do this, but you can see. What I want you to see is as we change values, little bits at a time, you can pull out the saturation values. You can pull out the brightness. Okay, so what this is doing is it's choosing the hues over here, but then it begins, when you have zero saturation, you have a white color. When you have brightness, you have a zero brightness, you have a black color. So as these saturation values increase, you begin to see the color gets added. As the brightness values change, you can see that it goes from black to an actual color. So this is the colors. This is the same strip with no saturation at the beginning, and this is the same strip with brightness at the beginning, no brightness at the beginning, and it changes over time. So as you adjust those values, it actually can change how you pull out the color of an object. So you might want to use something like that. So that's hue, saturation, and brightness. Another one is actually the hexadecimal values. And the hexadecimal values is something I use a lot in web design, and I like to use it in a lot of other things because I can just choose that very instantly. I can choose a color based on its hexadecimal number, and I can just have a little chart, and I can choose the one that I want. So CC6633 represents this orange color.